talk don't bother me. I want the whole wide world to know that I love.
And welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DeRienzo.
And I'm Miss Joan Moossy.
And we have Alison Dundy here again,
Yes.
joining us
Thanks
to
for
discuss.
having me back.
Thank you very much for coming and being with us. And we have a new victim, Erica Williamson,
Hello.
also from the Partisan Defense Committee. And we're here, of course, to discuss the recent developments in the case of Mumia Abu Jamal. It was, if you are following this case, it's been talked about quite a lot over the last few years. There was a decision, and I'm going to let the experts really tell us what courts decided what. I'm not, as most of us are not quite sure exactly what happened. It wasn't very good. It could have been worse. And then in a few minutes we're actually going to listen to or actually see a video of Mumia Abu Jamal. We're going to be playing that in just a few moments. But first, I wanted to ask Alison and Erica if they could tell us a little bit about exactly what happened the other day at the court, in the courthouse. Tell us, was it federal, was it state, what kind of court was it, what did they do?
Sure. Last week, Thursday, on March 27th, the Third Circuit Court of Appeals finally ruled in Mumia's case. And this is a ruling that we've been anticipating since oral argument was heard in his case on May 17th. And it was, by all accounts, a negative decision and a real slap in the face to all of Mumia's supporters and those who stand up against racist oppression. The court, Third Circuit Court of Appeals, basically decided to uphold a 2001 decision by a federal court judge named Williamson that stated that Mumia basically has two options, either sentence him to life in prison or order a new sentencing hearing which would decide whether or not he gets executed, basically legally lynched, or spends the rest of his life in a living hell, basically in prison.
So they did affirm the murder conviction.
Exactly.
Exactly. They confirmed the
refused to hear
murder
any
conviction.
evidence of his innocence, which the Partisan Defense Committee in particular has brought out. The confession by Arnold Beverly that he's the man who killed Officer Faulkner, not Mumia Abu Jamal. The affidavit by Rachel Wolkenstein, attorney for Mumia Abu Jamal. The affidavit by Mumia Abu Jamal himself proclaiming his own innocence, by his brother Billy Cook.
So they didn't
None
consider
of that
any
was
of this
considered.
evidence.
No.
What did they consider? Just the oral arguments by the attorneys?
Just the oral arguments by the attorneys, and while there are, Alison went through some of the evidence of his innocence. There are over 24, constitutional violations in Mumia's case, and the courts basically only heard 3. One dealing with the biasness of the racist Judge Sabo.
Who is Judge Sabo?
Well, he's Philadelphia.
Let's go back a little ways for folks who
Judge,
might not.
sure.
We know this. We've been following it for a long time. When did this? Who is Mumia Abu Jamal? Very briefly, obviously, background. Yes. What exactly was he convicted and put on death row in Pennsylvania for? What act was he accused of? And what is the position of his families and supporters as to his guilt or innocence?
Sure, I can, give you a brief update. I know your viewers, probably
most of them heard, but
very
some may
familiar
not
with
have.
Mumia's case.
Yeah.
But for those who are not familiar, Mumia is from Philadelphia. At the age of, he was radicalized, in the 60s around the Black Power movement, and at the age of 14 began, his started his first FBI record of sorts when he tried to name his high school after Malcolm X. At age 15, he joined the Black Panthers and became their Minister of Information, writing for the Panther newspaper. He later, after leaving the Panthers, went on to become a journalist and a pretty well-known radio journalist, and also
for NPR and other sources.
That's absolutely right. He interviewed the likes case of, Alex Haley and Bob Marley, but specifically what he did was expose the, rotten and racist police corruption that was going on in Philadelphia at the time.
There was a mayor by the name of Frank Rizzo at the time. Folks in New York old enough to remember Frank Rizzo don't need to be told much about him. Others should look him up and do a little research. He was sort of the northern equivalent of Bull Connors type of guy.
Yeah, well, Rizzo indeed, had it in for Mumia because of his political history, in particular because of an organization that he was following at the time and later became a supporter of, and that was the MOVE organization. And in 1978, there was a police siege on the MOVE organization's home, and 9 members of that organization were later arrested and accused of killing a cop who in fact died in his own police crossfire.
And that's prior to 1985, which is maybe the more famous confrontation where the city of Philadelphia dropped a bomb and killed 15 people, some
burned down an entire
children,
neighborhood.
The entire neighborhood, the children were killed.
C4 explosive.
11, yeah.
And it was maybe, 2 survivors?
Yeah. And one of the survivors, in fact, Ramona Africa, was the one who introduced the Partisan Defense Committee to Mumia's case back in 1987 when we became 1987 when we actively became involved in winning international support to demand his freedom.
So he languished on death row for allegedly killing this cop. Now there's been since then a lot of information, a lot of testimony, a lot of protests saying that first of all, the judge in the case, the original case, Judge Sabo.
The trial.
In the original trial, Judge Sabo, he was, we get back to his name, was really followed in the footsteps of the most racist and the most hang 'em high type of judge.
Well, he was known as a hanging judge.
The hanging judge, right.
And sent more people to death row than almost anyone in the country. And he was overheard by a court reporter as saying that he was going to help the prosecution fry the N-word.
N-word, okay. So that's pretty direct, and that came out. I mean, that was nobody denies that Judge Sabo wasn't that type of guy.
And if there's any doubts about the collusion between the police, the courts, and the government, the prosecuting attorney at that time was Ed Rendell, who's now governor of Pennsylvania, who has vowed that he will sign a new death warrant for Mumia. So in the intervening years, the Partisan Defense Committee has struggled to bring out the evidence of Mumia's innocence and mount worldwide support to fight for his innocence in what we call mobilization of social defense. Those are mass labor-centered rallies, and those did stay the hand of the executioner in 1995.
What happened in 1995?
He had what's called a PCRA hearing, post-conviction relief, and that was again in Judge Sabo's court. And because of the worldwide pressure that was brought to bear, while there was no justice, to be sure, in that court, the death sentence was simply stayed until he had gone through his appeals. So right now he faces a crucial conjuncture where the choices he's being given by capitalist justice are life entombment or legal lynching. And that's why we're mobilizing around the world to free Mumia now.
How is that a choice? How is he being given that choice? That's interesting.
Well, it's not that he gets to choose.
Right.
Is there going to be another penalty hearing?
That's what I'm getting at.
That there could be.
So it's not definite, but there could be another hearing.
The only options in a penalty hearing would be life in prison.
Right, Johnny.
Because in Pennsylvania, in a death penalty case, once they have a conviction of a first-degree murder, it usually goes immediately to the penalty stage. It's what they call a bifurcated trial. And so in this case where they've affirmed the conviction, I just wondered what kind of time lag could there be before there's a penalty hearing. But you're saying there may not even be a penalty hearing.
I believe they have 180 days
but I
to
think
decide, and they will likely
6 months.
appeal.
They will likely appeal.
Possibly both the prosecution and Mumia's
Well, that means
attorneys.
What happens if they appeal? Do you know what happens in the state of Pennsylvania at that point if they decide to appeal? That they impanel a new jury
No, not a new trial, right?
But no, a new jury for the...
Oh,
Yeah,
for the
sentencing
penalty
hearing.
stage,
Right.
yeah.
penalty stage.
Yeah.
So
Is
they
a
would-
jury.
They
It
would
is jury.
channel a new jury, just like it was a trial, except instead of trying guilt or innocence, life or death.
Right.
Well, so-
And
And both sides make their arguments.
Yeah, but you know, in fact, it's just another, you know, way to, you know, continue the racist political frame-up of
Sure.
Mumia Abu Jamal, and, you know, what he's really, you know,
And
we
let's
talked about
remind
choices,
people
but-
how long this has been going on. I mean, I know we said the dates, but
Right.
for people who
27
can't add.
years.
He's been
27
many
years.
of us
for
can't,
27
right.
years on death row. Imagine being is he still on death row even to this day?
He
Yes,
has never
yes.
been off death row.
Right, so right to the last moment, 27 years on death row. Can you imagine? Do you know anything about the death row situation in Pennsylvania? What's it like to live on death row as opposed to general population?
Well, I believe, you know, Mumia lives in a cell about the size of a toilet and gets about an hour of rec time, you know, a day, and is not allowed to touch or hold, or his family is a glass partition, you know,
When they
that,
visit, yeah.
you know,
Now,
divides.
what do you say to people, and I'm just going to be the devil's advocate because I look on my website from our previous, what the people who say, well, you know, Officer Faulkner will never hug his family again, you know, he was killed, blah, blah, blah. What do you say to that?
Well, then the police and the government and the courts should stop covering up the evidence of Mumia's innocence.
Yeah. Cops
Right.
who are so concerned about, you know, the murder of Officer Faulkner, you know, may want to come forth with some, you know, information they know
what
about the
happened that
frame-up,
night.
you know.
All right, that's our phone number. It's right there on the screen. 212-757-1538. 212-757-1538. Alison Dundy, Erica Williamson of the Partisan Defense Committee. Right. And we are going to take your calls, any questions you might have about the current status of Mumia Abu Jamal. Now we're going to play a video of Mumia in his prison cell. That's why I wanted to ask you about the prison cell, because we're about to see Mumia in his prison cell, or right outside his prison cell. One of the few interviews he was allowed before they cut off his interview, most of his interview rights. So we're going to go right to that, and then we'll be back for your questions.
And when we get back, we'll talk some more about Mumia, but we'll also talk about the plans you have in
That'd be
terms of
great.
mobilizing.
So you should step to the side.
Okay, whoops. Was the eruption movement? I'm afraid we just don't have the audio from that tape, and but I'm glad you got to see the picture at least. And if you guys give me a moment, I might try and find another source where we can see this video again. But in the meantime, why don't you tell us more about what you're planning?
Sure.
Yeah, why don't you grab the poster too?
Yeah, first of all, just regarding that video, what you were trying to show there was the Partisan Defense Committee's video, live from death row. This is Mumia Abu Jamal, and we will actually be showing that this Saturday downtown at our public office. So if you'd like to call our number, 212-406-4252, you can find out about that video showing. And we are mobilizing to take people from New York down to Philadelphia on April 19th, where there will be a mass rally to demand freedom for Mumia Abu Jamal. The slogans around which our contingent is being built are abolish the racist death penalty, there is no justice in the capitalist courts, mobilize labor's power for mass protest. Mumia Abu Jamal is innocent. Free him now. Please contact us at www.partisandefensecommittee.org or 212-406-4252. Join us on the bus to Philly. You wanna talk
We're
more about it?
also, yes, I'll talk more. We're also building, in addition to this class struggle defense contingent, rallies, United Front rallies in other cities nationally and also internationally, of which, you know, we've gotten a number of trade unionists, such as in New York, the New York Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, people such as Charles Barron, ex-Panthers such as David Hillard, internationally, the RMT railroad workers in London have signed on to the demo, and that, you know, on one hand, you know, points to the important class side of, struggle side of the work that we do in organizing the labor movement to get on board in defense of Mumia, because it's actually, you know, the working class and the labor movement that has the social power to stop production, demand Mumia's freedom, and compel the courts really to win his freedom. And that in many ways is counterposed to the basis upon which, you know, some organizations, you know, so-called socialist organizations have mobilized to free Mumia, and that is with illusions in the court on the basis that Mumia will one day get, you know, his day in court, a fair trial from the same, you know, racist capitalist courts that have worked for the past 26 years to see him framed. And we've actually, you know, approached some of these organizations in the last week, such as the New York Coalition to Free Mumia, which has organized a rally in Harlem the same day we organized our emergency protest, the day after a decision came out in his case. We approached them, and also the Mobilization to Free Mumia in San Francisco, to organize on a united front basis. And that means, you know, unity, you know, in struggle around the slogans, free Mumia Abu Jamal now, Mumia Abu Jamal is innocent, abolish the racist death penalty. And from these, you know, so-called, you know, defenders of Mumia's freedom, they basically, you know, didn't want to have anything to do with our efforts to organize on the basis that this innocent man has been politically framed.
Yeah, the last.
I'm ready to go.
Oh, you ready? Oh, okay,
Yeah,
great.
we gotta
Here for
work it.
Mumia.
Okay,
Excellent.
let's give it another shot. Here's Mumia himself.
Mumia Abu Jamal. I'm on death row in Pennsylvania. Ex-president of the Association of Black Journalists in Philadelphia. I'm still a continuing revolutionary journalist. I write for anybody who wants me to write for them. And I'm fighting my conviction, fighting the sentence, fighting for my life, and fighting to create revolution in America. Yes, I am a political prisoner.
From death row, this is Mumia Abu Jamal.
It was the eruption of the civil rights movement against Jim Crow segregation that shattered the McCarthyite Cold War climate of the 50s. The whole world watched as peaceful demonstrations demanding the right to vote were attacked by the police and the Ku Klux Klan. The civil rights movement challenged racist white America and gave rise to a generation of young radicals. But it did not lead to black freedom.
Revolution means change. It means total change.
When the movement came north in the mid-60s, it collided head-on with economic and social reality. The hellish conditions of ghetto life, the mass chronic unemployment, racist police brutality. These could only be solved through social revolution.
Very recently, the Census Bureau said something like 31 million people were in poverty. Other records say that there's 3.1 million people who are homeless in America. You've got people who do not have the basic needs fulfilled. They can't eat, they can't have shelter, they can't have clothing.
In Chicago in 1966, the struggle for racial equality meant a confrontation with the political machine of Democratic Party Mayor Richard Daley. After being stoned in the racist white enclave of Marquette Park, Martin Luther King called off a planned march for nearby Cicero. When 200 demonstrators from the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, went ahead with the Cicero March, they were met by a howling, brick-throwing mob. The civil rights movement was stopped in its tracks. It was during this time that Mumia Abu-Jamal came of political age. In 1967, as a young high school student, Jamal, then known as West Cook, was already a fighter.
As a youth in the 60s, I was impressed by the Black Power movement that was sweeping Black America and the Black world in Africa and the Caribbean.
He was one of the leaders of a mass movement to rename Benjamin Franklin High School for Malcolm X, part of a citywide battle for black studies in the public high schools, which culminated in a protest at school board headquarters on November 17, 1967. The Philadelphia police attacked the student protest. The police were led by Police Commissioner Frank Rizzo.
So I remember me and a brother named Eddie Jones and a few other brothers, about 4 or 5 brothers from North Philly, went to a demonstration in South Philadelphia. It's at the Philadelphia Spectrum, which is a big sporting arena. This was 1968, and it was the presidential nomination of George Corley Wallace III. I think that's his name. But he was running for president on the American Independent Party. In retrospect, it's kind of crazy to think that we would go down to a demonstration in South Philadelphia, which is like predominantly white, and protest against George Wallace coming to Philadelphia. But at that time, you know, we believed that it was our city as well. So we did it, and every one of us got our asses kicked by plainclothes policemen. You probably heard the tale, "I'll beat you so bad your own mama won't know you." Well, it has a particular relevance to me because as I was laying in the hospital, charged with assault and aggravated assault and beating of a police officer, my own mother walked by me, looked me dead in the eyes, and kept walking because she couldn't recognize me. I was beaten unrecognizable. I was in my mid-teens at that time. From that period and from those experiences, from me having to go through the hell of that and seeing the complete lack of power of people to resist that, I was attracted to the Black Panther Party. You know? So because there was not a functioning, active Black Panther Party at that time, we founded one and built one in Philadelphia. I was beaten into the Black Panther Party.
The Black Panther Party represented the best of a generation of militant black youth. They rejected the turn-the-other-cheek pacifism of Martin Luther King and stood for armed...
And welcome back. Whoops, sorry about that. Welcome back to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DeRienzo at the controls, as you can see a little bit silly here. And Joan Moossy and our guests, Alison Dundy and Erica Williamson from the Partisan Defense Committee. And we were just watching excerpts from a video, which you can see on YouTube, about Mumia Abu-Jamal. It's actually called From Death Row, Mumia Abu-Jamal. And can you guys tell us, you know, we're here because, Mumia was back in court. The government is attempting to appeal his, the temporary stay or whatever they call it of his death sentence. And at the same time, you and his supporters are trying to actually get him released from jail, so as to support the contention that he is an innocent man,
Right.
who's being railroaded.
It's important that his innocence be stressed because a lot of the way international support for Mumia was demobilized from the high point in 1995 was that liberals and leftists railroaded the movement into the demand new trial for Mumia. Now, what innocent man needs a new trial? Nobody said new trial for Angela Davis, you know, new trial for Sacco and Vanzetti. They got one. It didn't do much good, etc. So freedom for an innocent man who's been on death row.
And
Go ahead, Erica.
and I think that, you know, in many ways that excuse me, my microphone. Those same, you know, illusions are being had now, even with the, you know, slap in the face of that awful, awful court decision. You know, just a few days, the very next day, there was a planning meeting of Mumia's supporters here in New York, where they were basically rallying to write to Hillary Clinton to, you know,
Charles
pressure
Rangel.
her to do something about Mumia, and both, you know, both Democratic presidential candidates, Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton, are pro-death penalty, and they're no answer to, you know,
What do we do next?
pressuring
what is the partisan
forces
defense?
necessary to
So I know we only
Mumia.
have a couple minutes.
Sure.
What does the Partisan Defense Committee say we should do next?
We should endorse and build the United Front rallies to free Mumia Abu Jamal, and the principle around which we organize is freedom of criticism, unity in action. It doesn't matter whether you share the views of the Partisan Defense Committee or the Spartacus League, with which the Partisan Defense Committee is in accord, or if you have other political views. We don't practice censorship. Everyone should mobilize on the broadest possible basis to bring everyone out to demand freedom for Mumia Abu Jamal, abolish the racist death penalty.
We have our
Join
poster
us.
over here
Yeah.
with the information,
us.
right?
In Philadelphia, we are joining the demonstration built by the concerned family and friends of Mumia Abu Jamal. So we'd ask people to hop on the bus with us and come to Philly. We're selling
And that's
bus
Saturday,
tickets.
April
Yeah.
April 19th.
19th.
And they
Okay.
can write to us at Partisan Defense at earthlink.net. Go to partisandefense.org. Call us at 212-406-4252 to learn, you know, to read more about the materials that we have on our website proving that Mumia is innocent, including a fact sheet that we recently released, refuting the lies of the book by Smerconish and Maureen Faulkner, called Murdered
That's the
by
wife
Mumia.
of the widow of the officer.
That's right,
Officer Faulkner.
and it's pretty clear that, you know, watching the clip of our video that you saw earlier, why the capitalist state is going after Mumia,
There we
and that's
go.
because he represents the specter of black revolt in this country.
All
Thank
right.
you very much.